That's what the instructions said.
Good evening and welcome to the September 4th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department. I call to order the meeting at 6:30 p.m. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We'll go to the agenda, opening remarks. I do not have any opening remarks. Do any of the commissioners have any reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, there was discussion as last month on the Wakefield community pages about concern about recording equipment, cameras, license plate readers and things like that on utility poles in Wakefield. So apparently someone took a picture of a pole right down here on North Ave that seemed to have a license plate reader on it. And then today I got an email, or was it yesterday, I guess, about another camera on a pole over on, what's that called, Lake Ave, right by the Lower Common. And so I just don't know if that's going to be an issue. It was actually in the news today in Dorchester because of the shootings. Now people in the neighborhood are saying, we got to put some cameras up. And then a whole bunch of people say, no, you can't have cameras because you're going to violate people's civil rights and all that sort of thing. So it may be something that we need to know about, you know, and be aware of if it becomes an issue. People are going to be inquiring why these cameras are showing up and nobody in town really seems to know about it. So I don't know, Pete, I don't know if you have anything like that about like who all the people are and.
We know about it.
Okay,
And so the police have asked for it. I think there's, like the one down here, there's 3 others in town. And then the one on the, at the common is a security camera to cover the common area for festivals and events, all that stuff. So that's why it's not, it only records and keeps data for a short period of time. So, but if there's an issue, they can go back and look at it. So that's what that one is for. So.
okay.
Are these going to our
No.
VMS or public safety?
Public safety.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we're just mounting on the
They're
poles.
just,
and we have-
they just let us know they want to be on a few poles and we say, fine. Yeah, I mean, it's a town thing, so we don't charge them. We don't do like, we just, as long as we know about it, we don't cut it down.
So there's no revenue or anything that we get from it. And
Not for an in-town pole.
we installed it, right? I mean,
No, we work with, if they need help, usually it's just a contractor that mounts it.
oh, okay, because like the one down there has its own dedicated power source.
Right, yeah.
So
So we worked with them. on it.
Yeah, okay. But you said there were a couple others beside these two, so like,
Yeah, there's three others, I believe, in town.
and are they license plate readers or are they security cameras?
No, they're like that one. They're the license plate. I don't even know if they're license plate readers or they're speed checks or what they are. Not sure what they are.
And do we have a specific written policy? I've never seen a pole attachment policy.
No, in terms of that stuff with the town, I mean, I'm sure Elton's lived it. I'll get a call from the FBI sometimes to just ask to put up a temporary camera in front of a house, you know, so.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's happened many times. And, you know, that way if
It asked you many times, and what's your reaction been every time?
100%, whatever you know, just let me know which pole it is so I don't cut it down. Yeah. So all I care about is that if somebody asks about the camera, that I don't go just take it down. So if the FBI tells me, if they don't tell me, then, and I don't know about it, I'm gonna take it down. But if they've told me that, you know, on, you know, Smith Street, we're gonna have a, you know, in the area of house number 1 to number 10, I know it's there. And so if somebody questions it, I won't take it down. And those are usually temporary, you know, weeks to months,
Yeah.
shorter term. But in this case, the police, you know,
So if the FBI puts a camera in front of my house, are you gonna tell me about it or no?
he won't give me,
Definitely
they never give you a specific address that they're monitoring. They'll tell you the area.
Okay,
And more than likely, you probably are asked to sign something that you
Yeah.
can't disclose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, with those type of requests, are they providing providing a warrant or other?
I've never asked for one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if the other utilities have pole attachment policies. I assume they do, because there's a whole pole attachment group
Yeah.
in these utilities, so they must have a written policy on how they react to these requests and, you know, I don't know.
I mean, the pole attachment policy that I think National Grid had, I mean, you could probably speak to it more than I can, but is around like cable or, you know, like a regular,
It's about attachers, anything else, and
Yeah.
even some private customers, like they might wanna attach a floodlight or.
Well, we have that,
Necessarily.
oh no, I think it's
Right.
gone now. We had
And
one
there-
private streetlight in Wakefield and that was like in a driveway and that
Yeah.
would have been,
Yeah.
something like that.
But
But there's policies.
there's a couple of people who. When we finish this, I asked Jeff to join us just to answer any questions about that.
Click on participate. Joining. There you go.
So anyways, yeah, in terms of what we have for pole attachment, that's different. We have a couple of like, internet or, communications companies that have run fiber on our poles
Yeah.
that are not RCN and not Verizon and not Comcast, you know,
And we get revenue from them.
that we do, yes, yeah, we get revenue from those.
Okay, yeah, that's all I had. Thanks.
I guess the only, it's not like a report, but I just had questions about the email we received on some of the internal cybersecurity policies and wanted to know in what way commissioners should plan to participate.
Jeff?
Yeah, hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
All right, that means I'm being too loud. All right, I'll talk quiet. So, oh, you can't hear me?
You can.
we can.
He was being sarcastic. Keep going.
He's just,
I missed that part. Got it. So yeah, the email that went out before, the first one, that was an accident. I apologize. That should never have gone out. The vendor who was configuring our new tools hit a button they shouldn't have, and it went out. So I apologize for that. However, it was going to happen eventually. And I sent an email out a few weeks ago notifying folks that these training videos are going to be going out soon. And but they're going to go to the WMGLD.com accounts. So you all should be getting them in those inboxes. All right. And they are mandatory for anyone who uses our domain name for their email address. We're going through a series of cybersecurity teachings and tools and things like that to get everyone, kind of refocused on the safety that needs to be, the caution that needs to be employed when looking, at your emails, not clicking on a bad actor, an email that came from a bad actor, things like that. So there will be about one of these per month going out to everybody. Okay. And there'll be different ones. This one was on password. Next one might be on, what to look for in a spam email.
Yeah, one of the questions that Jack asked was, even though he has a WMGLD email account, but he never accesses it via WMGLD hardware, does it matter?
Yes, because might ask you to plug in credentials that are relevant to WMGLD. And if you plug those in inadvertently, that goes out to some bad actor. Now you've given them information that they shouldn't have. Does that make sense?
Yep. That makes sense.
So we want to make sure that if we're getting bad emails, we're not responding to them or in a way that gives the bad actors what they want.
Did I asked Jeff to just hop on quickly, does anybody else have any questions? And if there's other questions that come, and Jeff's coming back, not in November, but I mean in October, I believe in November, he'll be here for his regular presentation, but if you have other questions between now and then, he's happy to answer them.
Yeah, and this year has been I came into 2024 knowing this was going to be the year of cybersecurity. That's been my main focus. Ramping it up and taking it to the next level. So my presentation will have quite a few of the things that we've done throughout the year to make the utility more secure, whether it's physical security, whether it's cybersecurity, and the two mix in a lot of ways. So I'll be presenting a lot of that in November.
Cool. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff.
All right. Bye now.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I gotta do it. I gotta go to the library every month and log in. That's fine.
Okay, any other commissioners' reports? Town council liaison comments, do we know?
I don't even know, I haven't been told if we even have a new one yet.
Oh, okay. Just checking on that. Would be good to
Find out, yeah.
find out.
Hopefully they would notify us, but yeah.
In the past, every time I've had a new one, they've reached out right away.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Would you mind
Yeah.
asking? Okay. And next, public comments. So we have a couple people.
No, that's MWEC.
Oh,
Matt's got a camera and a phone, and then Dan is MWEC.
oh, okay, both MLIC. Okay, so hi, Matt. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining. We have a little bit of admin business, and then we can move you up on the agenda if you'd like. I'm sure you don't want to attend our entire meeting. So let's move to the secretary's report.
All right, are there we've got 2 minutes to approve, June and July. Any changes to either of those that are not represented in the board book? Nope. All right. Then I will make a motion to accept, nope.
I apologize. I did have one. I knew there was something in here that I wanted to ask about. I just found it. So on page 10, on the third line, before that, it says there was a Senate bill and then there was a House version. And then it says Power Options wants to modify their language. And I didn't know if they were wanting to modify the House language or the Senate language. It just says their language. I didn't know which one it was, House or Senate, unless it meant somebody else's. And I thought maybe Power Options had its own language that it had proposed that it wants to modify, but I don't know how that would be reflected in the Senate bill versus the House bill.
It's actually their enabling language, their own enabling language is what they were trying to edit. And so, yeah, I can modify that to say Power Options wanted to modify their enabling language, which is, it's 130, we're 164, they're 137, I believe. It's the portion of the MGL that gives them their ability to exist. And right now, the way that language is worded is they're restricted from working in muni territories without working with the munis. So in other words, what they do a lot is they will create like power buying options and for different towns and things like that. they can't do that in immunity territory, so they can't just come into Wakefield and start working with people. The only way they can work in Wakefield is work through us in any way, shape or form. And there are munis that work with them on certain things. And actually right now, they're potentially one of the people that would be bidding on putting solar on the Galvin roof. So we would work with them on that, but it would have to be under our terms and conditions, not just a general, PPA or something like that. They have to work with us. So and what they were trying to do is modify that language. And so we met with them all summer and then they agreed to withdraw the language that they were proposing. And what happened was at the 11th hour, as the bills were coming from the House and the Senate side, they tried to file amendments to modify the language again. And we ended up going right to Kate and to Donald and to Jay. We went to all three of them and said that we are adamantly opposed to what they're trying to do. And especially where they tried to do it the way they did. And so they would ultimately withdrew the amendments before they got any further. And which was what should have happened. We are in discussions with them now about what would be meme as meme. We're discussing, so because we represent all 40. We're in discussions with them about what would be acceptable language changes in their enabling language, but we were very offended that we had talked to them in May and June. They agreed not to pursue anything. Then at the 11th hour, they file an amendment and it had what they thought was acceptable language, but it wasn't. And so we made a quick move. Instead of talking back to them, we just went right to the legislators and said, all the munis did, all 40. When we went to our representatives and said, we're opposed to this. And once they heard that they were getting a lot of questions from the reps and the senators, they just withdrew their attempt to put the amendment in, because all that stuff in the 11th, when you get down to the end of the session, there's stuff flying everywhere, in those 11th hour, and they didn't want to deal with it, so they just withdrew it. And since then, we've had 2 meetings where we're discussing what would be more acceptable. So to answer that, I can add in their enabling language.
Their own enabling.
Yeah.
Yep. That would work for me.
I just noticed one little typo on the paragraph above about smart grid. Under the grid resilience and innovation partnerships, it's topic area 2. Which
So it's
Because-
topic area 3, it's topic area 2.
it's, smart grid for a third topic under the grid resilience and innovation partnerships is topic area 2.
Okay.
We had applied for 1 and 3, but not 2.
Okay.
Okay. Do these separately then. I'll make a motion to approve the June 17th, 2024 minutes as amended during this meeting.
Second. Oh,
Right,
yes,
you called-
yes. I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye. Oh, it's very rusty.
We are rusty. It's been a couple
And
weeks.
Have a vacation.
I will
Sorry.
make a motion to accept the July 17th, 2024 minutes as shown in our board book.
Second.
Oh,
All in
okay.
favor?
Aye.
I,
Jack, did you vote on? Okay.
I thought we were gonna have discussion, but that's fine.
Oh,
Oh, you have
Yes,
the
I had a
minutes?
question on page 14. Two questions. The third line from the bottom, it says state formula funds. And I didn't know if that was state formula funds or state formula funds. Is that, what, is it a formula fund or is it a state formula?
Formula fund,
It's a formula.
I think.
fund.
yes.
Okay,
Type of funding, correct?
Type of funding.
formula, okay. All right, then the way it's written is fine. And then it says mic, but we talked about 2 mics in the paragraph about, in the same paragraph. So I believe it's Mike McLean, not Mike McCarthy. So I just wanted to see if we could maybe
Yep,
just put in Mike McLean.
yep.
And I had no other changes.
And I'll, just to clarify, the state formula funds is based on a formula or a calculation based on, mostly, I think, population per state. And so that's how I guess the federal government allocates a certain amount of funding across different states.
Okay.
So if you're a more populous state, you'll get more federal funding according to their formula.
Okay.
So there's competitive grants that we can apply for, but then there's also the state that receives a block of money that they can decide, like DOER, Mass DOER can decide how they want to distribute those fundings, those funds. And they can have their own competitive process if they would like. But there's two, I guess, channels for receiving federal funds.
Great.
Any other discussion? Changes? All right. I will make,
Me too.
just because we amended it, we'll
Yeah.
make a new motion. I'll make a motion to approve the July 17th, 2024 minutes as amended during discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'd like to, consider, since we have, Matt Ide and Dan Murphy, as guests, at our meeting tonight, I'd like to suggest that we move up that agenda item. So that,
Motion to take it out.
I'll make a motion to take the item E1, NEET Pool GIS ROE certificate rule changes out of order and address that right now.
I
okay,
will second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, just introducing yourselves. And, I can tee up the discussion.
Matt, just as a way, I did share the email you sent out earlier today with them as by way of background, so they're aware of the current status, so. But
Great.
so hopefully that shortens up the discussion quite a bit.
Yeah, right. Well, you do get this, this is a pretty good example of, in my judgment anyways, of what MWIC does. A lot of it is behind the scenes on your light department's behalf. And we've certainly kind of take you through this, beginning to end. My name is Matt Ide. I'm the Executive Director of Special Projects for MWIC. And with me down in the lower part of the screen is Dan Murphy. Dan is our Manager of Regulatory and Market Services, and that includes basically following the NEET Pool beat. The NEET Pool is the group of market participants that advises ISO New England on policy. So all these policy matters that impact the rules of running the grid and operating the grid go through the NEET Pool stakeholder process for advice that we would then give to ISO New England, who's regulated by FERC, and then FERC, then ISO has to report to FERC through FERC filings if they want to make any changes. Also, NEET Pool itself has some legal status on certain matters that we can go directly to FERC on, and petition FERC to make changes to the market rules and the tariffs that are around that. So Dan and I basically cover this beat, and that's where this GIS issue popped up. And I don't know if you want to tee it up any further.
I'll just mention that we heard about it through an email chain from other municipal utilities that were also considering whether they should vote for or against this, and whether and you know, we should be contacting you to let you know of our position on this as a board. And knowing that the vote is tomorrow, right? The meeting is tomorrow.
Yes. Mhm.
Well, that we, you know, may not have enough information to make a vote tonight, but we did put that in the agenda that we wanted to have a discussion and further understanding
See yourself in the mirror?
of Emwick's position, because there were multiple votes. And I guess in the initial votes, Emwick had voted in opposition, so we wanted to get more information about
Mhm.
the background, you know, the underlying
Mhm. Yeah.
reason behind that.
And in the document I
Mhm.
sent you guys today, Matt gives a good background of where we were and why we were
Yes.
2 months ago. and
Helpful.
Where we are now in terms of what we
Yeah.
plan, what Emwick plans to vote tomorrow.
Yes, so,
Mhm.
okay,
All right. So the basic issue at hand is there's a system, the GIS system, that records generation of non-carbon emitting assets. And it goes into this, the generation goes into this system right now. It's recorded on a monthly basis in the aggregate. So if you have a generator that's, say, a solar array, what you do is you record or get into the GIS system the total amount of megawatt hours produced in that given month. So the proposal was to change the granularity of how the reporting goes into the GIS and change it from on a monthly basis to an hourly basis. And this is important in the sense that when generation goes into this GIS system, that's the basic fundamental information that turns that generator's output into a rec. So the thought process was that if you enter the generation now on an hourly basis, you can actually, what we call mint recs on an hourly basis. So if you are somebody who is trying to kind of balance your output or your usage of electricity, and say your objective is to be, you know, zero emitting, you could look at your output on an hourly basis and then effectively buy recs on an hourly basis to match your generation or your consumption on an hourly basis. It's a much more tightly fitting your, what we call your load curve. And a lot of corporations who have corporate goals for sustainability of being net zero, this additional granularity in the rec would be very helpful to them to generate, you know, and achieve their objective, because they can match their actual electric consumption with a rec that matches generation during that same hour. So you have a very effective matching scenario. So the concern has been on this, because on the surface, you know, it seems like this should, you know, just be a fairly boring issue and not be too controversial. But like everything else, the devil is in the details. And the concern that was risen by Emwick and others is that the way this really works is that if you want to do this as a generator, what could end up happening is that you would actually take recs out of a pool that was designed for utilities for their compliance purposes and move them out of that bucket into this hourly bucket. And then you could effectively sell them to these corporations that would then use them to match their corporate sustainability goals. And there's the potential that by doing that, you could actually reduce the supply of recs that could be available for, say, the National Grids of the world and the Eversources of the world to meet their compliance requirements. So as your demand would say relatively constant, but your supply could go down, there actually could be an upward pressure on RECs that would be used to meet compliance programs, and that price could go up. And then as it related to municipals, for your muni GGES, some municipals have strategies where they're combining retiring RECs of assets that they own and also acquiring RECs to, you know, get them to their appropriate levels of compliance, that this could ultimately increase the cost of those RECs that the MLPs were buying. So that effectively was the objection that kind of, I think, you know, created a level of controversy. But to step back, I think it's important for the commission to understand the role that MWIC plays. We have a very unique role in the NEPL stakeholder process because we represent assets, because MWIC owns assets on your behalf that you participate in. Example would be Seabrook and Millstone on the nuclear side. And then also we represent load. We represent, you know, the load carrying asset, which is essentially, you know, Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light. We also have a complete focus on the consumer, trying to do what is right for the consumer by maintaining an effective grid, by a relatively stable price of power, and by definition, an efficient price or a lower price of power. So we have a variety of interests that a lot of other NEPL stakeholders don't have. If you're a merchant generator, you just care about generation. If you're a load serving entity like an Eversource, you just really don't necessarily have any concern, because anything that costs consumers something, you just pass it on and get rate recovery. So the role MWIC plays in the stakeholder process is always trying to balance all these competing interests. And we do this by seeking out consensus among the stakeholder processes so that when issues come up, we can try to bridge the gap and also arrive at a solution that gets broad support through the entire stakeholder process. And we found that over the long haul, that's a pretty successful way to do that. Now we'll get into the making of the sausage. And this sometimes creates some of the reactions that, generate emails and so forth. So when this process has been going on for several months, the way it works is, in this particular case, there's a GIS working group that looked at this process, made some recommendations. It went to what they call the Markets Committee, and it stayed in the Markets Committee for a few months, and now it moves out of Markets and goes to the Participants Committee, and it's essentially the Participants Committee that has the final say, where the ultimate decision is made whether this becomes a NEPL policy that we recommend ISO to make a change and so forth. So with the concerns that I expressed at the Markets Committee, the first thing we did in that very first Markets Committee, which was in the spring, we noticed that there were concerns being raised by participants about how this was going to impact the price of RECs. Was it going to create a shortage? Is this the right thing to do? Are we undercutting existing programs to basically create a REC that corporations, for their own internal corporate goals, would most likely use? At the same time, anytime you create more value of RECs, you are, making the RECs more valuable and helping developers put in assets that generate the RECs. So you had people, very concerned about doing anything that was not going to enhance the value of the RECs, because that could then thwart renewable development. Then you had people that were concerned that if people needed to get RECs, could this actually increase the cost of that? And there was a lot of discussion and opinions flying around at that first Markets Committee. So what we did is we inserted in the role that I was describing, we basically asked that this issue get laid on the table and go back, and the proponent of this change, which is primarily Constellation, go back and research the impact on rec pricing. And also there was some direct costs of doing the computer programming to allow the GIS system to make these changes. And that was approximately about $270,000. So there were people concerned about that. The reason why MWIC took the position to lay this on the table was, reading the room, we were very concerned at the time that this thing may not make it and it could just essentially get stopped. And we felt that that wasn't in anyone's best interest. It wasn't in the interest of the proponents, and it wasn't in the interest of the people concerned about cost. There should be a way that we can think around that. And what that did is that bought us essentially a couple of months time. That meeting at the first Markets Committee was approximately in May. It came back to the Markets Committee in July. And we had already had a lot of discussions with Constellation Energy, which was the primary corporation that was proposing this change. And they came back and they did give us an analysis where they thought that the prices would not be impacted as negatively as we thought. They also came back with a way that was going to reduce the cost of this programming from $270,000 to about $75,000, which again, I think if we didn't have that motion to lay this on the table and then go back to make some of these changes, it wouldn't have happened. So they did come back to the Markets Committee in July with a proposal that incorporated these changes, and they did show us some studies. We, frankly, at that time in July, were not really that satisfied with the level of studying and their efforts of trying to show us that the price of these RECs wasn't really going to be negatively impacted. In other words, it wasn't going to pop up. And this this is totally inside baseball now, that the public sector, our public sector of municipal light departments, we have a voting block. And what we try to do is work collaboratively inside the sector so we can maximize that voting block to, address issues that we're concerned about. So in this particular case, we were concerned about this issue of costs. Constellation did make an effort to try to explain that they thought that the cost was not going to go up, but we were not necessarily that satisfied with that response. We thought there were some other things that they could do. So we exercised our voting block clout to essentially vote no at the July Markets Committee. And I think that's where the email to the other light department commissioners may have emanated. And again, there's a lot of market participants, and they may not have been totally aware of the discussions we were having with Constellation. But what we wanted to do was have one last chance to go back to Constellation and say, if we're concerned about the impact that this is going to have on the RECs, and you believe that this is the future, in other words, there's approximately 8 entities that do these GIS registrations across the country. Currently, right now, 2 of them have this hourly reporting. 1 has a pilot, but there's approximately 5, including New England, that don't do this. So if Constellation, which they are advocating across the country to do this, maybe there's a way that we could get our neighbor in New York to try to adapt this same change, so that when New England's market changes, New York's market changes at the same time. And by doing that, we felt that would really alleviate some of the concerns that we had for rising rec prices here in the New England market. I don't think we would have been able to make Constellation address that suggestion if we didn't do what we did at the Markets Committee. So as a result of that, we had continued discussions with Constellation, and Constellation did go out to New York and did ask to see what their plans were to change to an hourly, an hourly minting structure. Unfortunately, in New York, they are not planning on doing it, at least in the near term. But we felt that we were able to get Constellation to make a very good faith effort to try to reach out to New York to try to, inquire about our suggestion. So they came back and, they reported that back to us. They also gave us some further analysis that was showing that they still felt that there wasn't going to be a significant risk of rising REC prices. We then had conversations with state entities. The biggest state entity that's in this New England, in this NEPOOL process is the New England States Committee on Electricity. We call it NESCO. And we talked to them and they told us that they were going to be supporting this proposal. We also talked to the Massachusetts Department of Energy and the executive branch, and we got the same question about that. And we talked to the Mass Department of Energy about our concerns about rising REC prices. And they kind of, had the same conclusion that because this is a voluntary program, that they would be supportive of it. And they would watch to see, if there was a negative impact on REC prices. But for now, they felt that they were comfortable enough in supporting it. So at the end of the day, when we came back, we felt that Constellation made good efforts, especially on the last time around by reaching out to New York to try to see if we could get New York to change at the same time New England changed. That didn't happen, but we believe they made good efforts on that. And talking to the states were supportive of it. And when you think of the big picture, we do believe that this is a trend that probably will continue across the country, and we will have hourly GIS minting, if you will, in the future, and it will probably be nationwide. The other thing that we did learn is that on the federal level, there's some legislation coming down to sponsor green hydrogen, and in that legislation, the hourly RECs are going to be a very important component. So at the end of the day, just another momentum that we take that we think this is going to come. So tomorrow, when we do vote, MWIC will be voting. We have the proxies for our membership. We'll be voting with our membership proxies as well. And we believe that we'll now have garnered enough votes that we think we'll be able to successfully get this across the goal line, but do it in a way where we think, there's broad consensus and it was able to pass NEPOOL. So this is one of those deals where, depending on where people were inside the room, privy to certain conversations that they may not necessarily have been aware of, they may jump to different conclusions, or they may not jump to understanding what's really, what's really going on.
Matt, the New York decision, do you think that's temporary? Are they just saying they're not ready to do it right now, but they understand they're going to end up going that way eventually, or are they adamantly opposed?
I did not have the direct conversation with the New York people, and NYSERDA is the state agency there. I can't really give you an answer on that, Pete, except for understanding now that there's some additional federal legislation coming down for green hydrogen. I think that they're going to end up getting there. When they get there, I can't tell you.
I'll say one of the things I was in England and Scotland, and a big piece of the generation picture over there is growing significantly in the hydrogen world.
Yeah.
I was on a train with a guy who works for Siemens, and they're up to 30 or 35% on some of their units that are hydrogen, dramatically reducing their carbon output.
Right. The example for most of our objections and discussions with Constellation, we were using the example of how the region lowered sulfur emissions, primarily, heating oil and so forth. And there was a series of state laws that were enacted with a lower sulfur the level, but they were all triggered based on neighboring states doing the same. Because at the end of the day, if one state lowered its sulfur emissions, you know, it was questionable whether how effective that was going to be. But if the entire region could do that, then it was very effective. So what we saw was each state was like making its own legislation, but it was contingent on the region going in that direction. And ultimately the region did do that, and sulfur emissions were lowered. So we were trying to do the same thing with this hourly GIS to try to see if we could use this as a lever to try to get New York to kind of do the same thing. And these discussions were directly between EMLIC and Constellation. So I'm sure that's one of the reasons why maybe not a lot of other people were necessarily aware of this going on. So on the surface, it may have looked like we're trying to block something, when what we were really trying to do is gain broader consensus to get things across the goal line. We did this recently, a few months ago, with changing the procedures where batteries go to get studied and how they interconnect to the queue. And we felt that we were pretty effective in finding middle ground between battery developers and ISO to get, you know, that process straightened out. So there's a lot of that we do, trying to, you know, figure out how to get things done. And this is one of those examples.
Just a couple questions. Thank you, Matt, for that explanation. Very helpful. What is MWIC's voting block? How many votes does MWIC have in these?
Mm-hmm. So we have our own vote because we are a market participant, because we own assets, and then each individual light department has its own vote. Dan, you can jump in the percentage of the voting block for the public sector is what percentage of the vote? I think it's about 14%.
Of the MWIC share, and then the MWIC represents out of the.
Well, the first start off with the public
sector. I think it's 16.7.
So it's 16.7. So that you can see we're working closely with all of our other public sector colleagues is important for us. We try to do things in getting consensus so that we can maintain that 16%, because that 16%, you know, can be effective in, you know, getting our point across. Once we start
with that in mind, is E&E and their group voting the same way?
This one, we were unable to achieve complete consensus. So, the sector split on this. I believe there's a few E&E systems that are voting in favor. CMAQ, which is the Joint Action Agency in Connecticut that represents approximately 6 MLPs, they are voting against. We are voting in favor. But we are under instruction with one of our MLPs to vote against. So there's the MWIC vote, and then there's essentially 19 MLPs voting in favor, and one MLP at this moment that's instructed us to vote against it. So that's why the MWIC vote and the proxy that we hold for light departments in this particular vote, I think, are going to be, you know, pretty important to, you know, have a result here.
Can you explain the voluntary nature of the rule change? Is it when we say when they're saying voluntary, is it the generator that's generating the rec to determine if they're volunteering to move from the monthly GIS to the hourly? Is that what that is?
That's exactly it. The generator will voluntarily make that decision.
And do you have any sort of feel of, you know, the percentage or the generators that would move? Would that be something coming to this board for like our share at assets that are non-carbon emitting, whether we would want to move that? Is that something that MWEC would advise this asset should move from monthly to hourly because it's advantageous?
Yeah, I think in the MWIC model, the asset would be owned by MWIC. So the MWIC board of directors would have the authority to make that decision. There would be, obviously, we would talk and notify people of, what decisions, we would be thinking about as it related to the specific assets. But the way the governance structure is for the MWIC project assets, that would be a call of the MWIC board of directors. But the MWIC board of directors is made up of members and participants, so somewhat one in the same group.
And just add one note there. Some of the data from PJM, which is one of the ISOs that does have the hourly tracking in place already. I think it was in 2023, there was 320 million carbon-free megawatt hours generated, and 35 million megawatt hours were retired for voluntary purposes. So if you when you say it's the generators electing to voluntarily do it hourly, and then RECs that are voluntarily retired, like outside of in New England, the Clean Energy Standard and the RPS standard, like parties that are going above and beyond that standard. So down in PJM, that was only, little more than 10% were voluntarily retired. And then Constellation estimates that only 1% of that 35 million was done hourly. So I think in the short term, you're not going to see a large influx of all generators electing to do it hourly. I think over time, it'll gradually progress. So I think in the beginning, it's not going to be, a big waterfall of generators electing that.
The generator is going to have the option to go back and forth between hourly and monthly, or no?
You make an election, and then once that election is made, you can reverse that election. But you make the election once, and it carries forward until you can rescind that election. So you can go back and forth.
In the email, you talked about benefits to Berkshire Wind, the Cotton Solar Project, and potentially offshore wind. Would there be benefits to our batteries that we've cited in town? And would there be benefits to nuclear generators at all?
So the batteries are behind the meter, so they would not apply. The nuclear question is interesting. There's a couple of schools of thought, and Constellation is telling us that it's hard to tell, but I do think that over time there could be some benefit to the nukes. My reference, particularly in that email, was that if in fact RECs during certain hours could potentially have more value if they get minted on an hourly basis and then sold, especially to these corporate customers, there could be benefits to, like Berkshire Wind and to the Henry Cotton Solar Array. And also on offshore wind also could benefit in the sense that there's a program in Massachusetts called the Clean Peak Energy Certificates. They're tracking output of non-carbon generation during specific peak hours. And again, those RECs could also be enhanced by this. And my suspicion is, and this is just purely suspicion on my part from talking to the state officials, I think that's one of the motivations why the states are supporting this, because they think it will help their Clean Peak program as well.
I think that what you're gonna find is that the cotton ones are gonna be tied in with all the other solar generations. So the real ones that might have value are Berkshire Wind and our other wind projects. If there's gonna be a differentiation in value, it's gonna be when they generate, when the other green resources are not generating.
Yeah.
right. Absolutely. You're right, Pete. The wind resources are going to perform well during those peak periods. And there is some spillover with the solar sometimes, especially like in June. But materially, it's the wind assets that are going to provide a lot of benefit during those peak hours.
The one place that might help us a little bit is we're in the process now of beginning the evaluation of potentially repowering phase 1 of Berkshire and considering whether we would build a phase 3 and the economics. If there's beneficial economics to that, that might help as well, because phase 1 is having issues now, and we're 12 years into it. We have to start thinking about what we do next with that.
Yeah.
Is this only going to be applying to generators tied into the transmission system, so FERC interconnections, or even distribution interconnections that declare to be FERC compliant?
Go ahead, Dan.
It will be. I was just going to say you can have, like, for the solar aggregate program, you get renewable REC. So this will apply to more than just large ISO assets. Anything that generates a REC could apply to.
Would this change? Are there generation resources that MWEC would now invest in that look more financially now or in the future, that look more financially attractive or viable? Even if they're like emerging?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it changes what we're looking for, because we're looking for this stuff already. It could have some, at least in the near term, it could, arguably it may have a marginal economic benefit, but it really doesn't change our primary focus. We know anything that we're doing going forward, there's got to be an environmental attribute component to it, because the light departments, have to make sure that they comply with the Muni GGES standard.
As the load grows, I think that's where those RECs are going to be a lot more valuable.
Yeah.
So when we think about heat electrification of transportation, and the load growing by 2 times, that's where prices of those RECs are going to be going skyrocketing.
Yeah, the numbers are going up no matter how you slice it. And again, when you get into the value differentiation, all the RECs that are out there, the solar is flooding the market. So the ones that are going to be valuable are the wind ones.
Or anything else that can produce on peak.
Off peak, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if electrification, ramps anywhere close to where ISO is projecting, the overall supply of RECs has to go up to, keep pace with this. But there's going to be a lot of pressure because people are going to need the RECs. But that's the whole purpose of this whole program, is to create economic incentives for people to build, the type of assets that generate the RECs that people need for their compliance purposes.
Thanks, guys.
Do you have any idea how the Attorney General is going to land on this? Because they are the ultimate consumer advocate. Do they have any concerns? Because NESCO doesn't have a vote, right? The Attorney General has a vote.
Correct. Depends on which part of the Attorney General's office you're looking at. The ratepayer advocate had, and remember when I was telling you the meeting in May at the markets where we proposed to table this? My recollection is that, there are some very concerned, there are concerns raised, and I think some of the concerns were raised by the ratepayer advocates as to what this is going to do on the impact of the REC prices. So I can't tell you at this moment where we think they're going to come down on this.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out tomorrow.
Yep.
If they vote or abstain.
Thanks,
Yeah, I
Pat.
mean, why we think we can sway it is, if we look at the vote that was done at market, it was extremely close. And we think, the votes that we'll be bringing to the table tomorrow, if things stay relatively the same like they were before, we should, you know, it should pass, but you just never know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Um,
I'm confused. So they're signing off. Aren't they waiting for us to tell them how we want them to vote?
well,
Did you want to take a vote? I can get back to them after.
Well, I don't know.
Right now, the default is we give them our proxy, so the way that they're recommending to vote, we would vote unless you choose to tell them that we don't want to vote that way.
well,
Who told them not to vote that way? Community,
One of the towns.
Holden?
can you guess?
Hmm?
Can you guess?
Holden? Well, I said
It
Holden.
was Holden.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, my inclination would be going with their recommendation, really. I mean, they know about this stuff way more than I do. So.
mm-hmm. Well, I was just gonna, you beat me to it. I was just gonna ask if we wanted to take a vote on this issue, or if we wanted to defer to Emwick.
We don't usually take a vote on it. I mean, they deal with this stuff 7/24. We don't usually vote on any issue that they face, so we don't need to take a vote.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm thinking unless we had reason that we didn't want to, then we would vote to tell them not to vote that way on our behalf.
They could also change, like down the road as this evolves, if the rulemaking or the regulation changes in any way, they could change their opinion down the road, so. If we take a vote and we say, you know, we're 100% yes, well, they're gonna just keep voting yes for us, but the rules might change along the way, so I'd rather. Since they're dynamically involved, my recommendation would be we let them stay dynamically involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of the vote was if we disagreed with their position
mm-hmm.
for some reason, but if we don't, then I don't think a vote is necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Went way up.
Joe, can you hear us?
Now I can. For a second I couldn't. I don't see you guys on the screen.
Yeah, our camera went off for a minute. We'll put it back on. Why don't we keep going though, because it's,
Yeah, it's getting late.
yeah.
Okay,
Want to go back to the beginning?
yes, let's go back to old business.
Energy Park, as everybody knows, there's a lot of work going on up there. During the summer months, we did a lot of infrastructure work on Hemlock Road, so we could be out of the way. Conduit for the underground is basically done all the way up and down, and the gas was brought down to the site. There's a little bit more work we're finishing up, and also the tech is bringing their gas line down to meet us. You remember that the tech is not gonna heat with gas, but they are still gonna have gas for labs and for cooking. So, there is a gas service that is going up there for that. But there's been a ton of work going on up to that location. A lot of the steel is up for the tech, and the high school made an incredible amount of progress in one summer, considering where this project was a year ago. The fact that they've gone so fast so far. We're about to go out to bid for our site work, and you'll see our site work starting this fall so that we can be ready. We did execute the agreement with for the battery through MWEC. If you remember, we're using the vendor that they're using to supply 10 batteries to other systems. We're one of those batteries. So we've completed that contract. So, and we're actually gonna have that. They're actually wanting to install it next week if they could. They're ready to roll. So, but we'll hopefully have it in the spring, so that, or right before the summer, so that we can actually use it next summer. And I think that's about it, right, Dave? I can't think of anything else, right?
Yep, no, I think you covered everything, Pete.
Have we gone out to bid for the 2 solar arrays?
Not
the high
yet,
school?
no,
Okay.
it's still premature on that. That's more than a year and a half out.
Okay.
Yeah.
The designs are done on both of them, so we're 90% complete with the designs on both schools right now. So we have a a good solid design when we do go out to bid.
Okay. So,
Yeah, the spec is 95% of the bid, so we just
Yeah.
gotta get a little closer. Just make sure, there's actually an issue I learned about today with the tech roof. The what was delivered and what was partially assembled is not correct from an engineering perspective, so there's a little bit of issue going on at the tech right now in terms of their roof, so. I heard today that they're working on resolving it, but it could impact potentially the solar. If they end up staying with the current design, there's more of an angle than they were originally anticipating or something, so that could impact solar a little bit. But we'll wait and see how they get through resolving it, because what showed up on site and what they started to assemble is not right. So they're dealing with that, so.
Wow. It's almost like getting a bonus this year.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
So, yeah, so I just learned about that today, so but they'll work through that, and then once that's done and it's built, then we can finalize the design and then get ready to go out to bid.
Okay, thank you.
We included data in there on the solar just for information. I don't think we need, unless there's questions, we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about it. It was just an update on Joe put together on what's been generated so far, just to give you kind of an overview of what the community solar side and what the building side is generated so far.
Are you surprised by how much it looks like you are getting more on the WMGLD building than you expected and pushing more back to the grid than the building is using?
I'm not surprised that we're pushing more back, but I am a little surprised that, but I mean, I think we didn't have a lot of rain this summer, so I'm not surprised that it generated maybe a little bit more than we were originally forecasting. We had a pretty mild and not very rainy summer, so.
Well, it wasn't mild for a couple of weeks there.
Yeah.
I see that,
Early on.
the demand showing up there.
on the community solar, just out of curiosity, has there been any customer participation feedback from anyone saying like this is what I expected, this is not what I expected, or anything in between?
You haven't heard have you got any calls, Joe?
Not really. I mean, a couple people at the farmer's market, have mentioned, oh, we're excited to be part of the program and see it on our bill. But besides that, no backlash, and I think just positive stuff. So, that's
Well, the
all.
good news is, I think by waiting from April till May to start it, it's been a credit every time as opposed to a negative.
Right.
People don't generally
Yeah,
complain about that.
they're not complaining about a credit right now, so let's wait and see what we get in October, November or December, and then we'll see if there's.
Yeah, I just didn't know, if there is no feedback, we've done a good job at explaining what it is, that's.
I think the people that signed up had a pretty good feel for what they were participating in, which was good. And like I said, the timing of the start gives them a time to get comfortable with what it looks like. And I think the fact that we waited a little bit before we kicked it off was helpful. And then Jack said you haven't had any contact with Kenny about.
Yeah, so I went over there and I spoke with Ann Michelli today. She's the business manager. And I asked her what she thought about maybe having the ceremony over there. It would just be easier on all of us. She thought it was workable. She's gonna talk to the executive director, and there's somebody else who does, it's like the resident social coordinator or something. So they're all gonna talk about it and get back to us. And I said we'd be probably thinking about potentially the very end of September or early October. I just threw those out. So they're gonna talk and get back to me. And when I have something from them, then I'll go to Michelle, Ken's daughter, and ask, what would work for them. I don't know if it would be in the morning during the middle of the week, or if it would be at 6 o'clock at night, right when they finish dinner over at
Right,
at Brightview, and then so that her kids can go, she doesn't have to pull them out of school. So I don't know how that's gonna go, but they're amenable so far at least.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Then we can probably get pictures on like big printout, like something like that, and a bunch of pictures, so you can see what it looks like in the background.
yeah, something like that would
We
be,
can probably, rather than mount the plaque to the building right away, we can bring the plaque with us and then mount it later.
Jack, if I could ask if we could do early October, I'm away at the end of September.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes, if that's possible, because I would like to be there.
yeah, that should
But
be
if,
possible.
yeah, obviously I'm one of many, so if
Yeah,
it doesn't work,
Yeah.
I'll understand.
okay, yeah, so I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
How is he doing, by the way?
I don't know, because I haven't seen him in probably 4 weeks now, because I was on the Cape for almost 2 weeks. And haven't seen him since I came back.
Mm,
I talked to him once on the phone and he seemed fine.
okay.
So I haven't seen him moving around. I mean, he was, moving very slowly last time I saw him. That's what broken hip will do to you, I guess. I feel like Ken right now with my broken back. So I walked all the way to Brightview and back. I had to sit down many times today to get there.
Jeez.
But yeah, so I'll get back to you on what I hear from Brightview.
Okay, great. And now we'll turn to the review of our strategic planning goals. And schedule.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we found in terms of timeframes is that a lot of the things are gonna be ongoing. Certain things had specific, deliverables, and others had things that we would probably deliver an initial like plan or something, but then also review it on an annual basis. So trying to capture it on like a Gantt chart or something like that was a little bit difficult. Joe did a good job of trying to put this together based on our feedback, but a lot of the things that we've talked about on this are gonna be things that we attack and continue to review what we, for example, just on the workforce, identify new roles and skill sets what that looks like today versus 5 years from now and 10 years from now could be different, so those are the types of things that we need to, identify in the short term and then kind of continue to monitor and what roles will be phased out. Probably fewer right now, but if we're 5 or 7 years down the road, we already have a plan for gas that we'll let people attrit and not replace on the gas side, because we'll be closer to finishing our conversion to all plastic. But we don't know what that looks like 5 years from now or 7 years from now. So those are the types of things that, within all these, there's things we would do in the next 3 to 5 or 7 years. And then there's things that we have to continue to monitor because they may evolve and it may change in the next 5 to 7 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for example, in like the grants and funding kind of world, we have an election in November and that could look entirely different come next January. So those are a lot of things. Just a reminder, I think I've copied you all on it. The dedication is Monday at 11 o'clock for the grant. If anybody can make it, I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet, but we do have a 91-pound sign that we can put up, so. We got
91 pounds.
the government,
Oh, they sent?
they sent the sign. Says Joe Biden's infrastructure project.
Oh, it's big, okay.
Yeah. I saw it, so I originally was dropping my daughter off at Skidmore and there was one out there at a factory it was the same sign except it said something about technology project or something. I'm like, wow, look at that sign, and I'm with my family and they're like, why? Well, I'm like, that sign weighs almost 91 pounds. They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, we're getting one. So,
Came in on a pallet.
they came out on a pallet, yeah.
Where would we put that?
Well, we're gonna display it at Nasala for the thing, and then I don't know, we have to figure out a place to.
Yeah.
Maybe mount it to a pole on Water Street or something. That's where the main drag is gonna be.
So how big is it?
It's
5x5, I mean.
This, yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's pretty much like that. Yeah, it's good size.
well, I think I
Put
saw,
it this way, we lifted it off the truck with a forklift.
geez.
Mark, go grab it.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it on my shoulder, bring it up.
I think it's meant for like, you know, a lot of the infrastructure projects are highways and
Yeah.
roads, and so that it's meant for, to be
Visible.
Oh,
visible from the road when you're
Yeah.
driving by.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a little bit unique. Ours is a little
Yeah.
bit smaller, so we'll
Yeah.
put it on Water Street somewhere and. But. The government wanted, they've been very, Joe and Raven has done an amazing job working with them on this grant all along. They're very happy with us. Cause we were one of the first ones out of the gate. We were one of the first ones to get all our paperwork done, so they've been happy with us. So when they asked if we would be willing to do a dedication or whatever, or a celebration, we said we would. I think Joe's regretting that now because it's been a lot of work, but.
No, I wouldn't say that.
So,
Yeah, so it is striking to see that a lot of these bars are across the entire page, but I'm most interested in 2025. So I wonder if it could be helpful to the board to see what might be discussed when in 2025. And it looks like there's a few things, right, that kind of like kick off around January 2025. I'm just looking down the page. If you were to draw like a line between April 2024 and August 2025, there's a bunch of stuff that kind of like starts. And I'm wondering if we want to think about how that is going to kind of flow through the year, because some of these, yeah, and how that might actually progress. And one thing I'm actually really focused on, I know it's good to see it here, but it's gonna be feels like it's a lot of work, is the under customer explore new electric and gas rate designs, factoring in affordability, which starts in 2025.
yeah, I mean, that's one of the ones that obviously we have continuing on for quite a while. But I mean, one of the things we have talked, and we've already done that with the time of use rate, but coming up with a commercial time of use rate for EV charging is probably the next step we want to take. Right now, that the one we have is for residential, so so that's another example. We do have I think there's four or five, I think, that have signed up for the time of use rate so far, Joe?
Yeah, I believe that's 3 or 4, yep.
Yeah. So we'll have a little bit of time and data with that so that we can, I don't know if we need to make any significant changes in the structure of it for a commercial one. But we do have to factor in demand on obviously the commercial one. The whole idea of these programs is for time of use is to make sure that they don't charge on peak. So we need to make sure we factor that into our thinking as we set that rate. And is the penalty significant enough to not charge on peak? So, so we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, so I just went down and starred like 5 of them that look. So like the under electric and gas supply that develop the 10-year forecast. The under electric and gas systems that develop a plan to mitigate stranded costs in the gas system. Under customer, the survey customer pain points and needs for the energy transition. The rate design one, and then the decision-making criteria for pursuing funding opportunities. And I'm just wondering whether maybe a next step could be to just identify, as you did with the commercial TOU rate, like what more specific activity might occur in the next year or two that we would need.
Okay, I mean, we can do that. I mean, I have ideas on a lot of those.
Yeah.
Like
one of the things we're gonna.
deliverables around each one of the initiatives and
And then like,
timing as far as when.
how would we stagger them so we're not working on all these big things at the exact same time?
And even some of the ones that start and stop, like, do they need to be redone at a certain interval, right? Like 10-year forecast, do we look at it yearly?
Yeah, well, I think
Look at
one of the things we're doing with that
every
is
5
develop
years.
it, but then
Every 6 months?
that's gonna be an ongoing.
Right, right.
Elton doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think we're finding on the grant side, and a lot depends on, again, on the election, how many will be available, but I mean, it's a lot of work for what I would argue is a very, very limited return. So we've been putting a ton of work into these grants and we're not having much success at all right now. And so we need a criteria for how many of these we're actually going to pursue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when I look into under like electric and gas system, the very first one in there provide an overview of the existing electric and gas system and the loading capabilities on a regular basis. Like I'm assuming as the load changes on a yearly basis, the peak load changes, like is that a yearly task?
Yeah.
And at what point during the year we would get a report out of it? Or
Well, we usually do that report out at the beginning, like when we do the gas and electric presentations at the beginning of the year, that's when we report to you guys. But as Dave and Abdir and Vinny went through last January or February, we've started to develop criteria for how we're gonna monitor things like as heat pumps, as EVs show up in neighborhoods. And the steps we're taking to react to that. So we already have a criteria as we monitor this stuff. But we're constantly monitoring the system and I think, we'll continue to do that. What might happen is if either one of those things accelerates at a much higher rate than it's currently doing, that criteria that we use for upgrading neighborhoods might get, we might accelerate that, so if we, instead of seeing 1 or 2 EVs and heat pumps show up in a neighborhood, we see 7 and we see a much higher volume and much faster, then we'll react to it. Right now, the framework is not driving anything to be much faster than it's happening right now. Things may change that force that to be faster, so we'll wait and see.
are you gonna be planning to analyze the system based on the 10-year forecast to make sure that?
Oh, yeah, well, that's what we've been doing. Again, from a structural perspective, in terms of capacity into town and from a substation perspective, we can already handle the 2 times. But it's what.
Distribution lines.
Distribution system, and we have built capacity in for additional circuits that we can start to build when the time is necessary.
So Elton, we have all the data for 3 years in our SCADA system. So we can look at the loading based on circuit loading from the substation out, so we can monitor that, which we do now. And then in addition to that, we did that long-term forecast looking at our projected load, and then taking into consideration the growth of electrification as well. So we'll update that every year to see if our projections are in line with the actual. But also we constantly monitor circuit loading, and that is helped. Like Pete said, a lot of that is we get it at the grid, at the crib secondary network level when we look at the added load from the EVs when they go through the process, or people heat pumps to a certain area. We'll see that on a daily basis as those requests come in, and then Vinny runs the transformer load management frequently as well. So we keep an eye on transformer loading constantly. So I think we can monitor it at the secondary grid. We monitor the circuit, and then as a total, we look at the entire system against projected loads and actual loads every year.
Yeah, this summer we did have a single transformer fail due to loading, but it's the first one in like 3 years, and even with that, we've been in pretty good shape. So
what we're finding out is customers not notifying the utility anytime they put in an EV charger.
Right. So one of the things Dave's tried to tighten up
the process.
Dave's tried to tighten up that process now with, the only way that they're gonna get by it now is doing it illegally. If they pull a permit, we're involved now, so.
Right, it's the ones without a permit.
Yeah.
Usually.
So when they do heat pumps, or they do service upgrades, or they add EV charger, anything that potentially adds load, then the building department requires them to get a service order number from us in order to get their permit. So that service request comes in they have to explain on the application what load they're adding, what they're doing. Yeah. And we review each one of those, and then we decide if we need to do anything, or if there's any cost associated with in terms of infrastructure upgrades. But all that's done. With the addition of Abdir, we'll be able to even focus more on that, but that's the process that we have now that we see all those additions, and we started that probably 6 months ago.
Yeah. And one of the other things I think you're gonna see over time is there was stuff at the legislative level around EV charging. One of the issues we face, and almost every town faces, is that the assessor is not telling, they know who has EVs and they're not telling us. And the legislature is trying to deal with that because they know that that's a major, you guys live in it too. You're like, the assessor knows who has EVs and we should know, but they won't tell us, so. They're trying to figure out a way to make that happen so that we can close that loop on the ones that just install a charger themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion in the legislation about data sharing, especially when it comes to like IEP and how
Right.
the EDCs and LDCs are gonna be sharing the data amongst themselves and outside of their
Right,
organization. So this would be one of them.
yeah,
Building stocks as well. Anytime a building gets upgraded, like you guys are working with the building department for the permits, but not every single town is reporting that to the utilities.
Right.
And in that vein, I think we're also uniquely positioned where we're gathering this data both on the electrical side and the gas side. It'd be interesting to see how the electrification potentially shifts gas load and
well, we do report, I mean, that's in your book every month, you could see it, and I think it's had minimal impact so far, but I think the hope is that over time, we do see that.
but we'll have the data to.
Yeah, well, you'll continue to see, yeah.
Continue to see that, and,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling that outside entities where they may not necessarily be able to see both, because it's, two different entities that may or may not talk to each other.
Even if it's the same entities, we don't talk.
Yeah. That coming to folks like us that have the data on both sides to kind of look at what they may expect and what we're seeing.
So just going back to the strategic planning. I think it would be helpful if we could also have a view of the first year.
Deliverables on the first year.
Deliverables, and also, I assume that we're not gonna be able to start all of these
Right.
items in year one, or maybe it's a 2-year look. I don't know,
Well, some of the things,
month look or something.
some of the things we're already doing, so
Yeah.
it's more talking about what we're doing with it currently versus how that may have to evolve on an annual basis.
Right.
You know, like Dave said, we're already doing load forecasting, we're already, a lot of things we're doing, like
Maybe-
human resource management, like, we've already been looking at, we've added a couple positions, we're also planning for, like, letting gas attrit a little bit, and like, so we've already got an initial plan on some of those things, but what happens as those things roll?
Yeah. It could be like, if there's a supply forecast, for example, if that's done on a annual basis, then what is the output of that? Like have like a report and maybe, I don't know. You could designate that as a star or something to show that when that is happening over an 18-month period or something, or I don't know.
So what we typically do each year is in the spring, we do the presentations by the two operating departments, gas and electric, and in the fall or closer to winter, we do the supply presentations from MWEC and from Sprague. So those are the kind of the 2 points where we talk about those two things.
Right. But I mean, it would be good to have that expressed, I don't know, visually on this chart or to change.
We can try to keep enhancing it, yeah.
And Jen, were you saying that there were certain items that you felt like should be sequentially or prioritized?
So they're just the items that look like they start in between the first two time periods, which would be January 2025,
Mhm.
or in that time frame. And there's there's like 7 of them basically that I kind of just focused in on because they look like they aren't being done currently, right?
Mhm.
So it'd be like a new thing that begins at some point in
Yeah.
2025, yeah.
Okay, we can work on that.
And then the other thing that just caught my attention was the reduce overall gas usage. Is there a reason why it starts at this point in time? I'm just curious.
Well, because what I was thinking on that, because if you look at the one above, reduce, so if we spend time focusing on reducing the peak, it's gonna have the effect on that. But at a certain point, the focus on reducing the peak is gonna, then we're gonna continue to look at reducing overall. But that, I was thinking that the time, energy and money that we would spend in the next couple of years would be more focused on. If we try to, the more time.
Bang for your buck. huh?
Yeah. The more money, the more time and energy we spending money trying to get people to, more than what we do today with, our rebate programs would be misspent. If I worry about what happens, at the general level versus the peak level.
Yep.
It's not gonna be as effective.
Yep, I was just wondering whether there's a reason for the specific date, or whether it's like an estimate at this point.
Estimate.
Okay. Yeah.
But that was the logic behind it, was think about focus on any resources on the peak to start and then overall long term.
Something that I heard over the last couple of days on the rate. There's discussion about developing energy rates that include both gas and electric as a total type of envelope of energy consumption for a customer rather than just separate electric rates versus gas rates. So worth keeping an eye out as far as it's all tied in about like stranded investments on the gas side and how do you now maintain a safe and reliable gas system when your customer base is shrinking.
So where's that coming out?
A lot of like working groups that are going on about rate designs and
Wow.
crazy ideas, but
Well, it's the whole concept of customer has one wallet, right?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
yeah.
two.
So there's very few places like us that are both gas and electric. So
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
you guys serve National Grid customers with your gas system.
Correct.
And vice versa. And
Quite the
So
opposite.
you're gonna have to like start thinking about franchise rights and service territories.
Yeah, we're-
around.
we're
Already there.
We're the luckiest ones because we do the gas and the electric. So
It's one bill.
yeah, we have it all in one bill. Tom's is 7 pages, but that's. I'm kidding.
The one that you put there is longer than mine. It's pretty simple. I
Yeah,
just like
we
the
should
purchase.
talk about that. That's interesting.
Any other feedback on the strategic planning goals, initiatives, schedule? I feel a little bit overwhelmed by all the priorities. And
You think you do?
I know, I'm just saying, I'm feeling bad for,
I guess the question I would have is if you were to do one of the things that I started first, like what would be the thing that is the highest need or biggest benefit? And I know you mentioned maybe it is the decision-making criteria for funding opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably something we're gonna do in the shorter term
Yeah, I mean, it
because
seems like maybe it's
we,
something.
we
that
do
could
have to stop spinning our wheels in some of that world. And that's probably a little bit of low, and also I think building a strategy around helping to reduce the gas peak. One of the things, one of the positions, Olivia's gonna join us next month. Olivia finished her MBA and we've expanded her role a little bit. one of the things I'm gonna have her working on is kind of like being a kind of a key account executive, where I want her to get more involved with our largest customers more directly, learn about their businesses, and also with the thinking of trying to have in mind, one of the things is helping to reduce gas peak. So are you a candidate for, you know, converting to all electric heating if you're one of our bigger customers? And we have those incentive dollars on the commercial side that we haven't been fully spending those yet. We've tried to strategically spend those, but we have some money in that bucket that we can do customized programs. And so I think one of the reasons I've kind of expanded her role is to kind of look in that world. And so we'll start to see some effort in that regard.
Pete, an excellent story for workforce development as well
Yeah,
with Olivia.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you'll start to see Olivia a little bit more now, joining our meetings and stuff like that. She's gonna play a greater role. She's been great. She's been here since she started college as a summer kid. We hired her. She's been an office clerk. She's been a lead. And now we've expanded her role further, so.
That's great.
That's why maybe it helps to focus on one or two things,
Yeah.
right, in the immediate term.
Okay, if there's no other feedback right now, so what's the next step for this?
We can look at trying to add some more details and specifics into this and maybe share it again, not next, maybe the month after. We'll
Okay.
try. I mean, a lot of it can factor into the goals and objective process for next year also.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, like it's as you're incorporating, maybe incorporating the projects that, you know, whatever you're doing, where it lines up on this chart. So if you are doing an activity or starting an activity that lines up, just to say like, hey, we've developed this plan to factor in like the on the decision-making criteria for the grant funding. This is what our criteria is, and this is where.
because I think it's all in your brain and Joe's brain and Dave's brain and.
Yeah.
It's.
Some of it's written down. We just we don't share all of it. Or the board book will be 100 pages long.
Yeah.
But
It might be a good idea to tie it in, as Tom is saying, to like the objectives, existing
Yes.
objectives as well.
that's what I was thinking, that
One of them is tied into objective, I don't know, 5D, for example, or
Yeah.
something like that. And then we can start thinking when we build the next round of objectives for next year.
Yep.
As far as what do we include? Granted, not all of them can be worked on at once, but.
And again, some of them, a lot of them were already doing something in that regard, and it's just part of our, like I was explaining with the report outs and things like that. We're doing some of the stuff, and we just need to keep doing it annually.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're different deliverables every year, I guess.
Yeah.
In one year, you can deliver something about one of the line items in here, but the following year could be something different or an update to the existing deliverable. And
Yep.
That's building on Elton's say, I could just be as simply as, you know, in our board book, if this particular agenda item, you know, lines up to, you know, number 2, electric and gas systems, and, you know, maybe put a number to, or a letter. So
Now you honestly, that part would be so much work.
Okay.
Because it's hard to put to have like each agenda item trying to.
Okay.
That part would be a
Then
lot.
I don't want,
Like the big stuff, I think.
yeah, maybe the big stuff.
Yeah,
the overall objectives are
Yeah.
much better than.
yeah. Trying to do that on a monthly,
base.
yeah. That would be a lot.
Okay, no, I thought that might be easier to just be like, hey, this lines up to 3C.
The other way around could be something that can be done, like if there is something on the board book and it's in line with a strategic objective XYZ, rather than tying the initiative on a monthly basis to the strategic objective.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if there's a highlighted one that, yeah.
Like today, if we talked about the NEPL GIS, which one of the objectives that could be tied into? Could have been identified in the board book type activity.
Okay,
In terms of the school reduction plan, we did get the report back. We included a handful of pages in here. The schools do have it. And I think, Joe, is there any update? The town was reviewing it, right?
Yeah, I think so. So they actually ended up applying for, I think it's the block grant, the energy efficiency block grant. So I think there's like 5 different topics they could have applied for. And they actually submitted one of the CET audits, the Dolbear School, for engineering and design of potentially replacing the Dolbear School's heating system with heat pumps. So it's to fund the engineering design of that. So I'm not sure when they hear back from that, but we were involved in helping them kind of apply for that and figure out where best to maybe apply to potentially get funding under that grant. So
That's great. I guess that alludes to my question of, this is a great first start. How does the schools take this and then apply it to the things that need to be done, or as projects come up or equipment starts to age out? How are they using this as a roadmap, or will they start to use this as a roadmap to replace that equipment in a efficient manner?
yeah, so I think part of the methodology too was to take a look at the audits, and I think this was discussed back in March when we had the big meeting too, was kind of take those audits as a first step, and then maybe that'll roll into potential green communities funding. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year, but it's getting a pulse on some of those things. Maybe some of the low-hanging fruit, or maybe some of the bigger projects, depending on where the dollars kind of fall in and what the town wants and needs as the greatest need that they see fits.
That would be more of an activity that the schools would have.
Yeah, no,
right. Like not necessarily anything tied into the gas and light department.
Yeah, so I think what we talked about in the initial meeting is if they receive a award, then they can factor that into the capital planning for the next year and basically say, like, here's the remainder that we would need to fund through the capital budget. So it would need to find its way. The remainder of the projects that's not being funded by somebody else needs to find its way into the capital budget for the upcoming year for it to happen.
That would be part of their strategic capital investment plan, I guess.
Right. So they have their eyes. That's why I like keeping them, notifying them that these 2 schools are of focus, right, area, and getting ahead of the grant funding so that you can go through that process early, well before equipment fails. Because this is it's a long process, right? You don't want to be waiting till the equipment fails to do it.
Right.
So,
I mean, the only place that I see us playing a role is in some of the energy efficiency equipment, whether it's lightning or the potential incentives that could be given.
Right.
Similar to.
So for example, the heating system of the Dolbear, there may be some incentives we can give to help. Once that engineering design is done, we understand, we may be able to customize a rebate to help with that a little bit.
Wi-Fi thermostats, I'm looking at this, like wireless thermostats.
But outside of these 2 schools, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but town council is looking at putting solar on the middles, on the Galvin. There's the ARPA grants. I think there's going to be a warrant article and town meeting. Are we going to also provide our normal rebate? I'm assuming that system's going to be higher than 25.
Right. We talked about doing a customized rebate for that one, but again, it depends on the size of the final size of the system, the bid process, and Dave's already looked at what we require from an infrastructure perspective. So we talked about maybe giving it a rebate based on our current level, but subtracting out the cost of the infrastructure part so that Cause there's over 100 grand worth of work that we have to do to accommodate that system, so.
What size are they thinking? Has it been determined or not?
Yeah, I wanna say it was like 500.
Yeah, it's like 425, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So sizable to the new high school system as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's comparable to the high school, right?
Now, will that operate, since it would be essentially town funded, school funded? That would operate more on a regular commercial where the sellback, they would get a credit for the sellback.
Yeah. But we get the recs.
You get the rec.
We've already informed them, we only give them a rebate if we get the recs, and they cannot do a PPA.
Okay,
So it has to be a straight buy, it can't be cause some of the solar vendors out there will do a PPA, but they understand that they can't do that.
that makes also, keeping in line with our current policy.
Yeah. So again, the key for us is what we're buying with the incentive is the recs, so.
Okay. So is there anything for us to take action on?
No, it was just an update.
I remember in March, there was talk of having another meeting. After the audits, the detailed audits were performed.
What ended up happening is a lot of we can have another meeting, but I think like the ship's already moving, so. It was kind of feedback if we need to, but a lot of the action was going on over the summer, so Joe stayed closely involved with them in terms of guiding, helping get the audits done, get it to them, and then work with it. We've had a couple of conference calls with the team. Melissa's been on it, Tim from the schools. So
Okay.
there's been like a subset of the people that have been, and like he said, that they did get the grant submitted, the first grant for, so they're.
The design.
It is moving.
Okay. Okay. Great.
I don't know, have you are you our
Oh.
rep again on the, who's the rep on the energy?
I am.
Is there any need to have another meeting right now with the large group or?
I think it was such a quick turnaround for the grant. that
Right.
There wasn't the bandwidth,
Right,
but there probably should be a meeting at some point when it's appropriate, and maybe it's after they hear back from the grant.
Yeah.
On like what the next.
next step
would
should be, yeah, I think, I agree. Like she said, a lot of it was going on, like,
It was.
we got
quick.
the audit back and then we immediately had to make, because of the time frame, they had to get going on the app, so.
But I can ask them at the next meeting when.
Yeah, it's probably, if we do hear back.
But I would think, I think at this point, it doesn't make sense to get together until there's more information. on
Yeah.
What,
I didn't realize they had applied already for a grant because I thought that the last meeting we talked about, the deadline was in October or something.
so that's a different
Yeah.
grant. So the
Oh.
October is the green, I think we're
Communities.
not there yet this year, although I could be wrong. The Green Communities does actually fund the equipment, but they're talking about even before that, like getting a more detailed design spec.
Okay,
So I think it's running at
Ah.
a little bit slower pace than it was initially.
yeah. And was that grant for the design, a federal or state grant? Was it?
It's a state grant. I think it flows
Okay.
from federal, but it's a block. The state grant, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so as long as things are moving forward, we don't need to slow it down. All right, so then the other new business, mid-year review.
Year review. I included in red, the mid-year update, probably a couple of things to call to your attention. On the capital planning side, I talked last month or the month before about, we had in our I'm sorry.
You know what? I just remembered something. On the grants. Just for the record, could you just state what the outcome was of the research that Mike McCarthy did on the the grants that would be.
Oh, yeah, the ones that we're involved in, he didn't think it would impact, and Tom Mullen agreed. And I think didn't I forward I thought I forwarded an email that Mike sent.
I think you forwarded an email
Yeah.
saying that, of the grants that we were applying for, that none would be,
Impacted
by the,
if we fail to adopt the multifamily
zoning.
change, yeah. So that we wouldn't necessarily be at risk. But again, the caveat was that if there are issues with it, like long-term, they could still move to change that, but right now, the grants that we've been pursuing are not affected.
And also the green community
Is not
grants
affected
is not affected
right now.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, just wanted to get that into the record. Okay. We'll go back to mid-year review.
Yeah, so in terms of capital, we had planned we have 4 underground feeders that run from BB to Wakefield Ave. 2 were upgraded within the past 12 or 13 years. I've done 2 of them so far. We had 2 more in the plan, 1 for next year and 1 for the year after. We had a failure on one of them. We actually decided, after analyzing cable, we actually replaced about half of it this year. And we're probably gonna do at least another 25% and then maybe save the other 25% for next year. So in terms of capital, we've moved some stuff around in that regard. So just make you aware of that. We'll talk about it at year end, but that was a major capital job that we had to kind of move a piece of it into this year. And other than that, a lot of the operational things are moving as planned.
And on that, when you say a piece of it had to be moved into this year, are you talking about a proportion of the cost?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
and do you have any idea what that proportion is?
We've already spent between the cable and the labor over 300,000.
Say $250,000.
Yeah, I was
Of
just,
the
see, all right, I should have gone with $250,000. We only spent $250,000.
So $250,000 of what's the total project cost or for that?
Again.
It's gonna be close to $500,000. So we've spent about a quarter and we're probably gonna spend another 125 because we're gonna do about 25% more of it this fall and then save 25% for next year. So we'll have done about 2/3 of it,
Okay,
or 3/4 of it by next year.
okay, that's helpful. I just wanted to know the
And is
magnitude of that shift.
the 4th cable into, are you planning on still doing the 4th cable
Well,
next year?
we're probably gonna analyze that a little bit more and we may do a piece of that next year and a piece of it the following year. What we have to do is analyze duct space now too. What we did, because the cable was failed and it was out of service, we pulled cable out, and pulled new cable in. The ideal is that you're not doing it when the cable is failed. So we would be looking to replace the 4th one while it's still in service, which means you gotta do an analysis and a design to use existing ducts that are vacant. And so it'll depend on that analysis, like, do we do a portion of it next year and a portion of it into 26? But it's a big job and again, Dave and I decided after looking at what cable was there and the kind of the testing readings that we were getting that we took a big chunk out of it and it was, we needed to do it, so. Dave finally agreed with me after a little while.
You're good. Dave,
And I always agree with you. Always agree with you.
That was one of the ones we went back and forth on a lot.
We did. But at the end, you were right.
I don't know that you should always agree with Pete.
No,
At least tell him.
no, trust me, he didn't agree for a long time. I wore him down.
I finally came into his office like a beaten man.
Well, when a different problem came up, every time we talked about it, I'm like, why don't we just replace the middle part? He's like, all right, yeah. So. Other than that, I think a lot of those things are on targets. In terms of the customer service, again, we talked about this a couple months ago. We did reduce our base rates by 25%. Earlier, like late winter, early spring is when we brought those down. We've already done a couple of in-person sessions and I envision that with Olivia's expanded role, we'll be doing more. They did a presentation for a senior.
You said that was very well received.
Yeah.
So how many people were there or what was it like?
The senior center one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was at the church, right?
Yep, yeah, I was at the Stone Church. It was the Retired Men's and Women's Club of Wakefield. And yeah, there was like 25 strong there, I would say.
Yep.
Spoke for about 30 minutes or so, 35 minutes about the energy efficiency programs and also innovation. So talking about charges at the head of the lake, the solar that's on the roof, things that are on the horizon, things like that. So it was pretty well received. They had some good questions. And I was surprised to see, I took a poll to see how many people were familiar with the programs. And, there was a mix. Some people were familiar, some people were not. But it was a very good experience, I would say. It's a cool club to be part of if, once you're retired, I would say. They have their ways of going about things. They say
Olivia and Joe were the youngest by a good 35 years.
oh, easily, yeah. But yeah, they say the Pledge of Allegiance, they sing God Bless America, it was cool. But
And so did you get any like questions that you think would be helpful for us to know about? In terms of what these people are either understanding or not understanding about the
I don't know.
program?
That's a good question. They were gonna send some feedback. I think was a couple of weeks ago, so I may reach out to them and see if I left my card and everything. They have my information. So if there are any additional things that come up, and I told them we'd love to come back and present if there are specific topics that they'd like to see. We could do that. I mean, what was funny is we actually, I think it was the same day, a couple people, actually, there was at least 2 people who came in with their Energy Star stickers and came in and filled out in person like a rebate form for some appliance they got in the last 3 months. So it was funny. We saw that until we recognized them, and I thought that was pretty funny. It was pretty cool to see. So I would love to do it again. I think it's really nice to kind of reach out to different groups of people within the town.
He had to get on a waiting list to get an audience with them, right?
I know, yeah.
It's true. They meet, I think it's the second and last Wednesday of each month. And this was back after the community solar presentation in January at the library. Someone reached out to me from over there and said, we'd love to schedule you. Here are the couple openings we have. And it was all the way in August. It was like end of July and August. So they're like, we got these ones open. So I picked one, and so they schedule them out pretty far. It's a hot commodity. So
Yeah,
All right, well, great. I'm glad that there was a good group.
yeah. It sounds like there's a need for in-person events or, within the community.
I think there's starting to be a return to a
Yeah.
growing interest in that type of format, yeah.
Can I ask a question about the reliability performance? We seem to be performing very close to targets.
Yeah.
And when I compared it to previous years, we're doing worse. Is there something that is driving that performance, or?
In terms of,
Like both the safety and the KD being a lot closer to targets and
just
higher than.
the year to date.
The year to date, I'm looking at year to date.
Yeah.
When I compare it to like 2023, we're probably a lot lower back then.
What does that have to do with the
recent squirrel
and the
animal
lightning
issues?
and
Yeah, we did have we had a bad month.
Whole
different
I think it was
things, right?
June. Was it June, Dave?
Looks like June and July are
Yeah.
really above average.
I'd asked Tom, I think Tom knows the dates that we had some bad
Yeah,
liability.
I think I was impacted by it.
Elton, thank you for bringing this
Three
up.
different
I
things.
appreciate it.
3 of them, but yeah. Well, one of them was very localized to the transformer next to my house that or decided to land into, or I don't know. It had a bad day.
Yeah, so we did, I mean, in terms of the safety, I mean, we're still well below 1, so.
No, but I mean, when I look into,
Yeah.
the target is 0.65.
Yes.
We're trending closer and don't know with the storm season coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a tough June, relatively speaking, but overall, I think we're still well below goal.
Yep.
So. But yeah, I mean, there was a couple of, it's the 2 summer months with the.
More outages than we normally see.
Yeah.
And mostly it's animal caused. So we have, once we get an outage, and especially if we see it reoccurring. I mean, animals is hard because squirrels and birds, it's hard to determine. But a couple things we found that we've gone out in patrols, and we've installed some hard guard on the messenger over areas that are cleared, with a connector on it to avoid some animal contact. We've gone around and had a more of a focus on, making sure that animal guards are on the transformer bushing. So, so there's been an effort in the last few months to really focus on that. It is unfortunate that the number is a little higher because we've focused on it, but we have had an increase in animal caused outages. And we had the feeder that went out. I forget how long that was, but that we hardly ever have any underground feeders. But when an underground feeder does go out short, it affects a very large population. So that's usually a significant driver, and that's what we had this summer was that feeder went out. So I'm sure that had an impact.
Understood, yeah.
It's a good question, Elton. I'll dig in a little bit more too. Like we have now with the addition of Abdia, we can go back and do a little bit more analysis and some of the stuff too. And we want to, also look at some of the programs we have that are preventive maintenance. Want to make sure that those are yielding the results we anticipate. So, so we want to focus on those as well. We'll take a close look at it.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
And we did just complete the hurricane survey, so I think he identified 25 or 30 punch list items that we'll be working on.
On page 68 under 2E, this is the get input from customers on websites, and you have the fall. Can you just talk about, are you still thinking you will?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I assigned to Olivia in her new role, is to kind of figure out ways that, I still talked about maybe doing a focus group, where we have it professionally run and we, get feedback on the website, and I think the plan this year was to kind of get feedback and some ideas about ways to make improvement. The next year's goal will be to do some upgrades to the website. So, I've talked to her a little bit about a couple of different ways to do it, like a specific focus group type setting, and also, whether we do it through surveys or feedback or, in addition, so.
Do customers usually respond to requests for surveys?
The last time we did a big survey was we had Great Blue do it 5 years ago. I mean, it was pre-COVID. And we had a pretty good response. Yeah, and I think some of the things that were identified there were, I mean, our lowest scores were still extremely high. No offense, but National Grid would have been jealous. But the areas that we did focus were around our programs.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the work we've done over the past 5 years has kind of came from that, You would expect that we got good grades in, customer service and reliability, But where our lowest grades were on the energy, knowledge of the energy efficiency programs, availability, like, you know, and work we've done over the past 5 years has really expanded that, you know.
Okay.
Some of the
Well, I was just, go ahead.
Some of the mechanisms that we can use too is like, Jeff was here, but I mean, we did the online billing portal and things like that. We were gonna do a customer information, upgrade to that system. And I think Tom participated in it and we had a couple of dozen people. I don't even know if it was that big, that big of a group. And we had offered, a bill credit for $25 or something for some of the, for some of the things. So, we provide a small incentive to, to people and their, just as a thank you to, as an enticement to get people to participate.
Participate.
So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So there's things that we can.
I mean, I think with this, you want to get people who are going to go to the website ever in their
Right,
life.
that use it.
It's a subset
Yeah.
of the entire population,
Right.
right? Like who's actually has an interest in visiting the website.
Or an interest in websites as a whole,
Exactly.
and like what, some usability,
Yeah. There's always those, when you go to a website, they do a short survey afterwards.
Yeah, so I talked to Liv and Jeff about
Yeah.
potentially doing something like that, where,
We can hang
People who are already on the website.
Did you find what you were looking for?
Okay.
that's why I was talking about it starting it in the fall. I don't know if there were any other questions on the notes that were there.
I don't think I had more questions.
Can you just expand on page 6, 4C, just the Beacon Climate Greentown Labs? What does that partnership look like? What is that?
Dave, we originally went to Joe and actually Dave went to a couple of presentations and they've asked us to participate in a lot of stuff. Actually, Dave and I think are speaking in November. Is it November, Dave? We're panelists for something.
Which one?
Greentown Labs, the
Oh,
Beacon.
yes, that's Greentown Labs, correct.
Yeah, so we originally were approached by them is to participate in a group that was applying for a couple of grants. And so and then Dave and Joe went to a presentation that they had. So we've been kind of in working with them. We've applied for some additional grants with them. But they've asked us to make a presentation on the energy park and.
Are they a business here in Wakefield?
They're part of that incubator in Somerville.
Okay, so they're part, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with them, so.
Yeah.
What is, as they go out and get grants or advise?
They try to solicit groups of people that can apply for grants with them. That's one of the things that they do. They've also tried to develop a software product that we don't think is ready for us to buy. It's kind of preliminary where we think we're a little bit further along on that. So we'll wait on that, but they've been good to work with. They're kind of, that whole Greentown Labs is, thinking innovatively and, promoting, new technologies and ideas. So I think that, that's been a useful relationship with them. Again, they asked us to speak in November. So,
yeah, I mean, they've facilitated a couple events where they invite other municipals and they have some of the startup companies come and they talk about what they're doing, technology, and they do a quick 1 or 2 minute presentation. It's a networking session. It's good because you get to meet a lot of people and emerging technologies and emerging new companies. So it's and that company, Beacon Climate is really involved in Greentown Lab. So it's been a great way to meet other people.
mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other
Questions?
Not for me on that.
concerns? Comments?
I just had one more question on the 50 Audubon Road, those transformers. Those weren't customer related, right? That's system related? So that was all on us, right? There's no,
That's us. Yeah, we own them, we maintain them. That's the ones that were pad mount, we converted to overhead. That's in the package, Jack. That's what you're talking about, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
mat type. Yeah.
Yeah, the mat type, yeah. So that mat, so those have been, so that's the last one. We've eliminated them. All the mats in town have been eliminated and they were, it's not unusual construction in the industry that people are trying to eliminate. It's not done anymore. And that was our last one. So those are overhead transformers that we own that were mounted on the ground and then in a fenced-in area. And then the secondaries come off the transformer and go into the customer you see there. So it's sometimes it's a little bit of an effort to come up with a plan that you can eliminate it and the customer doesn't have to pay a lot of money to reconfigure their system. So Anton's, we did one, Mike's Gym, we did one, and this is the last one.
Yeah, we did, where, Melbob's is, that building was one we did earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
Behind that building was one. And
Yeah,
this,
New Salem, we did one, right?
yeah.
And we did that too.
So these are kind of a liability. So
Yeah.
this job was the last one. So we've eliminated all the mat and fence. We call it mat and fence. So
Mat and what?
mat and fence. You basically take an overhead transformer, put it on the ground and fence around it. So it's like Dave said, it's not a construction that we use anymore. Part of it is that pad mount transformers are more commonly used now, but back then there may not have been a supply or they were looking at ways to do it cheaper, so.
Did we eliminate the fence or is it still fenced?
It's fenced now only because the entry to the building is still low, but they're actually working on a project where they want to underground. So we're feeding them off of a pole top right now. So we have it's protected in a smaller way, but eventually, once they finish their design for their upgrade, there'll be a pad mount there and the service will be changed.
Oh, okay.
So, and they'll pay for that. So they're coming up with Vinny has what they'd like to do. He has to give them a price, but they will pay for the conversion to convert overhead to underground on their property and clean it up. And like Pete said, remove the fence and maybe do something with the way the secondaries enter the building, but they'll be paying and they'll be performing a lot of that work.
Yeah, because it just looked to me like the first picture was prettier than the second picture with all the wires, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But they're going with pad mount, so they'll all be gone.
Yep.
yes.
Okay. I think we've come to the end of our agenda, so
If nothing else, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
okay,
Second that. Or-
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. very
Thank
much.
you.
Great work.
Thank
Good seeing everyone.
Thank you so much.
See you.
Everybody goes, hope everything's good in